Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent McCory. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. U.S. President Joe Biden visits Israel Wednesday as he attempts to prevent the Israel-Hamas war from spiraling into a wider regional conflict. And Chinese President Xi Jinping hosts world leaders and extols his grand plan of building global infrastructure and energy networks connecting Asia with Africa and Europe. All that and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. The Middle East is a powder keg since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th. Shortly thereafter, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that the Jewish state was at war with the militant group. U.S. President Joe Biden is in Israel Wednesday on an urgent mission as he attempts to prevent Israel-Hamas war from spiraling into a wider regional conflict and to encourage the delivery of humanitarian aid to the Palestinians. After a late Tuesday strike on a hospital in Gaza claimed hundreds of lives, it remains unclear who is responsible, with officials on the two sides of trading blame. An Israeli military spokesman says its intelligence shows that the Islamic Jihad is responsible for the failed rocket launch which hit the hospital in Gaza. But the Palestinian envoy to the United Nations vehemently denies that story. Video from Reuters shows charred vehicles and personal items scattered around the hospital courtyard. A Gaza civil defense chief gave a death toll of 300, while health ministry sources put it at 500. While meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Tel Aviv, U.S. President Joe Biden gave specifics on why he is visiting Israel and about the hospital incident.
I want the people of Israel, the people of the world, to know where the United States stands. I've had my great Secretary of State here. He's been here for a lot, but I wanted to personally come and make that clear. The terrorist group Hamas has slaughtered, as has been pointed out, over 1,300 people. And it is not hyperbole to suggest slaughtered, and including 31 Americans as part of that. And they've taken scores of people hostage, including children. You said, imagine what those children hiding from Hamas were thinking. It's beyond my comprehension to be able to imagine what they're thinking. Beyond my comprehension. They're committed evils that and atrocities that make ISIS look somewhat more rational. You know, Americans are grieving with you. They really are. I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you. But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we've got to overcome a lot of things. And it also means encouraging life-saving capacity to help the Palestinians who are innocent, caught in the middle of this.
The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry says that nearly 3,500 Palestinians have been killed and more than 12,000 injured in the past 11 days. Israeli authorities are reporting more than 1,400 people in Israel have been killed and at least 199 others, including children, were captured by Hamas and taken into Gaza. In a new development, President Biden says Israel is agreeing to allow humanitarian assistance into Gaza from Egypt with the understanding that inspections must be allowed and that the aid should go to civilians and not Hamas. Israel halted the flow of food, fuel and water to Gaza following the initial Hamas attack. Before President Biden's arrival in Israel, his trip was overshadowed by the hospital attack in Gaza, which led to the cancellation of Biden's summit with regional leaders in Jordan. White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara has more on the conflict.
Hundreds were killed in an explosion Tuesday at Ahli Arab Hospital in Gaza City. Palestinian authorities blamed an Israeli airstrike, while Israel said it was a rocket from the militant group Islamic Jihad that misfired. That group denied responsibility. The attack happened hours before President Joe Biden departed for Tel Aviv to meet Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to show U.S. commitment to Israel's security and push for humanitarian aid for Gazans, following days of shuttle diplomacy by Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
It is critical that aid begin flowing into Gaza as soon as possible.
Biden was scheduled to continue to Amman, Jordan, but after the Gaza hospital attack, that part of the trip was canceled. He will not be meeting leaders of neighboring countries, King Abdullah of Jordan and President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi of Egypt, or Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, who returned to Ramallah, where thousands of Palestinians protested the hospital attack.
Our Jordanian brothers said that we cannot have a summit with these conditions. We don't know whether President Biden is still going there or not. The only thing that would make sense if he made ceasefire immediately, and I'm coming to force the implementation of ceasefire.
Since the militant group Hamas launched its brazen incursion on October 7th, Israel has launched strikes on Gaza, in one case killing 6 people at a United Nations school where 4,000 Palestinians had taken refuge, the UN said. 2 million Gazans are under siege.
A total siege when you cut the basic infrastructure, when you cut access to water, when you cut electricity, if you don't allow food to be delivered. This is not in line with the international law.
2 U.S. carrier strike groups have been deployed to show support for Israel and deter other actors in the region.
This is a massive amount of force, and it affords President Biden many options to respond should Hezbollah or other proxies of Iran decide to opportunistically either attack U.S. forces or to attack Israel.
In Tel Aviv, Biden will ask Israel how it plans to minimize civilian casualties. He will push for a humanitarian corridor to allow aid into Gaza and for the release of hostages held by Hamas. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
Well, protesting erupted in the West Bank Wednesday as Palestinian demonstrators set barricades on fire as Israeli Defense Forces troops watched. The Palestinian Health Ministry says 2 Palestinians were killed by Israeli forces in the city of Ramallah. Correspondent Jan Bochert is standing by live in the West Bank. Jan, this has been definitely a tumultuous day in the West Bank. What more can you tell us?
Well, I spent the day there in Ramallah, and the protests started just after the noon prayers. And there were a lot of people there in the outskirts of Ramallah. They were throwing rocks against the Israeli soldiers, set some tires on fire, and the things start like building up in the afternoon. We could hear some shots. It wasn't clear if it was live ammunition or not, but the ambulances just rushed to the scene, took some people, and now we have the information that 2 Palestinians were killed. I spent the day there in Ramallah talking to the people there, and there's a mixture of anger, sadness, frustration about what's going on in Gaza right now. A lot of people compare this situation now to what happened 75 years ago, what they called the Nakba, when the state of Israel was created, and a lot of Palestinians, they had to leave their homes to go to refugee camps like the ones that are still today in Ramallah.
Now, in terms of the neighborhood, we've seen protests all around. What is the concern there between especially the residents of Ramallah, the West Bank, and also, of course, Israeli authorities?
Oh, there's a lot of fear it's not just the Palestinians, but also the Israelis, as you said. Everybody fears that the violence could escalate to a different level in this region. So far, more than 50 Palestinians were killed in the West Bank since the start of the war. But we're not seeing the kind of violence that, of course, we've seen in Gaza or in the border with Lebanon and in northern Israel. So far here, we have protests, some incidents, but not a widespread violence. So I think a lot of people are fearing that this could happen here also in the West Bank. The anger and the frustration is building up, and I think people they have the reason to be afraid what's coming.
But would you say that what you're observing around is generally there is more, everything is functioning as, as expected?
Yeah, I mean, life is going on here. You can see people are going in and out at the West Bank from here, from Jerusalem. You can cross, but there's a lot of fear that things could escalate and get out of control.
All right, let's hope there will be peace there. Jan, thank you very much. That's a VOA correspondent, Jan Bochart, reporting live from the West Bank. Now, Lebanese security forces used tear gas and water cannons to ward off protesters demonstrating near the U.S. Embassy in Beirut Wednesday against what they say was Israel's attack on a hospital in Gaza that killed hundreds of Palestinians. Journalist Pat Koda has more.
People are demonstrating in front of the American embassy. These demonstrations started yesterday evening after the blast of the hospital in Gaza. Yesterday evening, there was a lot of looting. There was a lot of shops near the compound, near the embassy compound, that were burned. Today, the army is making sure that security is preserved around the compound and in the neighborhood of the American embassy. And until now, there are still rioters and demonstrators in front of the embassy. They are close to Hezbollah, Palestinians, and also they are with the war in Gaza. So this is one. Also, we have something else, is that in front of other embassies, there have been demonstrations, like the French embassy yesterday evening, and also this afternoon in front of the German embassy. Where I am standing right here is I am in front of the UN building, where every day there are demonstrations. Today there was demonstrations in the morning. All they are calling on stopping for a ceasefire in Gaza, and also you have some demonstrators that they are encouraging Hezbollah to go to war.
Elsewhere in Beirut, thousands of protesters gathered in South Beirut at a demonstration called by Iran-backed Hezbollah, which fought a war with Israel in 2006. Now, while reiterating that he is standing firmly behind Israel, U.S. President Joe Biden announced that an additional $100 million in humanitarian assistance is bound for Gaza and the West Bank. The president also said that Hamas does not represent all Palestinian people and that the militant group has brought them pain and suffering. For more on Biden's trip to Israel, we go to VOA White House Bureau Chief Patsy Wida Kuswana joining us live. Now, Patsy, looking overall, do officials feel that the president has achieved the objective of his trip to the region?
Well, President Biden just left Israel for Washington, D.C. about half an hour ago, so we haven't had a chance to speak to White House officials about the result of the visit itself. But a couple of things that I can underline, Vincent. Number one is that this is just half of the trip. The second half of the trip, where he was supposed to go to Amman, Jordan, to gather Arab leaders, the leaders of Egypt, Jordan, as well as Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas. That has been scuttled because of the explosion that rocked Gaza City Hospital yesterday. So on that part, the White House is saying that the president will continue to have conversations even though the summit has been canceled. And on the Gaza City explosion itself, a really key development here, while President Biden said that he sides with Israel in terms of that Israel is not to blame for the explosion. His White House officials has said that based on the intelligence that they have received, based on open source information, on intercepts, satellite imagery, it does appear that the explosion is caused by a failed launch rocket by a militant group. Now, of course, these investigations are still continuing, but however, the information that is deemed enough so that President Biden can say publicly that it appears that Israel is not to blame. So that's a really key development as part of President Biden showing up in Tel Aviv to show support for Israel, a longtime key ally for the United States in the Middle East.
Well, Patsy, great reporting. We really appreciate that. That's VOA White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara reporting live for us there. Now here in Washington, D.C., a group of protesters is calling for peace between the Israelis and Palestinians. VOA's Ignatius Ano joins us live from the U.S. Capitol. Ignatius, tell us what's happening where you are.
All right, Vincent, thank you. First of all, Anthony, come with me. We're currently at the National Mall, and just right there is the U.S. Capitol. Hundreds of people have joined, this particular protest or rally, essentially calling for an end, what they say an end to the genocide and ceasefire. We're privileged to be joined by one of the team of the organizers, two organizations, I should say, Jewish Voices for Peace and If Not Now. Caitlin, thank you for joining us. Let's have a walk as we go ahead, but explain to us the essence of your presence here today and what do you want Congress to do?
Absolutely. First, I just want to clarify that I am personally not one of the organizers, but I am here in support of this action organized by Jewish Voice for Peace and If Not Now. And as an American Jew, I'm here to call for an immediate end to the genocide of Palestinians. Our government is utilizing its funds, our tax dollars, to fund this genocide.
I'm not going to catch you there, but thank you. And Vincent, right now, as you can see, the event is underway. Hundreds of people have lifted their placards as they are trying to listen into what the leaders of this particular gathering are talking about. And as you can see them, pretty passionate about their call for an end to, the hostilities in the Middle East as we speak.
Well, Ignatius, really appreciate your reporting. And maybe just a quick question in terms of, have you seen people from the different regions, from the Palestinian side and the Israeli, joining in this group?
Okay, Vincent, let's try to sort of get you to see them. And when you find people with the Palestinian flag, they will be on the side of the Palestinians. And right there, Anthony, just let's take our camera there. You can see them with the Palestinian flags as well as they stand for that territory. And right to the left, Anthony, let's just take the camera there. You see the flag of the Palestinians there with the U.S. Capitol in your background. And obviously you can also hear them say, not in our name. And this is particularly in reference to U.S. Jews here in Washington, D.C. But not only within this area. We've spoken to people who have come all the way from the U.S. state of Philadelphia and even Southern Virginia. And they have been here, we're told, since yesterday to make their presence felt and their voices heard on this issue, Vincent.
All right, so definitely there are people from all sides calling for peace, and we appreciate your great reporting, Ignatius. That's Ignatius Ano of VOA reporting live from here in Washington. Well, Chinese President Xi Jinping warned against protectionism in the world as he opened the Belt and Road Initiative Forum in Beijing Wednesday, criticizing Western efforts to reduce dependence on the Chinese economy. Xi also lauded his grand plan launched 10 years ago of building global infrastructure and energy networks connecting Asia with Africa and Europe through overland and maritime routes. Russia's Vladimir Putin is among leaders from more than 130 countries attending that forum. Well, now China has become a major financial development project on par with the World Bank. The Chinese government says the initiative has launched more than 3,000 projects while galvanizing nearly $1 trillion in investment. Earlier, Chinese President Xi Jinping warned against decoupling from China as he addressed the Belt and Road Forum, criticizing Western efforts to reduce dependence on the Chinese economy. For more on the BRI Forum, I'm joined by Yinan Wang, a reporter with VOA Mandarin. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so one of the issues that has been raised is that some of the loans that China has been giving to many countries, especially African countries, are so crippling in that some of these countries are just unable to repay these loans in the long run. How has President Xi been addressing this particular issue?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all know the Belt and Road Initiative is one of the most important foreign policy agendas for Chinese leader Xi Jinping, if not the most important foreign policy agenda. So China has to make ways to make this forum, to make these things work. So what we have been, what have been seen over the years to address the problem for repayment is they created the so-called emergency fund. Basically, that is the idea is to pouring in more money into the countries in trouble. So what they did is to either issue new loans or to roll over old loans to extend the terms of repayment. Also, we have seen the Chinese Central Bank, the People's Bank of China, is having this program called money swapping programs, basically to pour in more money into other countries. So, in looking at the future, what they have been doing is to making the vetting process more prudent, making the program smaller. Incorporating outsider third parties, for example, the IMF or World Bank and other Western banking institutions to diversify the risks.
So one of the other things President Xi brought up is what he says is discouraging, rather decoupling from China, that the world is telling people to just disconnect from the continent. What does this mean? What does he mean by that? And what does he want to see, according to him?
I think that by saying that, President Xi Jinping is laying his criticism against Western countries, most notably the United States and European countries, for what he sees as a containment of China, because we have seen over the previous U.S. administration has been doing the so-called decoupling, but other people call it a de-risking. Basically, is to separate the most important the sectors that has national security implications. But China saw that as a containment against China's continual development. So by saying that, China wanted to present a so-called different path, a so-called China model, that is to be more inclusive and to better connect the world, particularly the third world countries.
Yes. Now, we know that in 2019, when a similar forum happened, it had an attendance of about 37 leaders. Now it was down to 23. What does this tell us about the mood at this time?
I think it shows the deteriorating international environment for China. The downsides of the countries participating in this year's forum is mostly the European countries. They have different views. They have suspect China's model. Most notably, Italy is considering withdrawal from Belt and Road Initiative.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Yinan. And that's Yinan Wang, who is a reporter with VOA's Mandarin. Now, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni on Wednesday is condemning what he called a cowardly attack on a wildlife park that he says killed a honeymooning couple and vowed the assailants would pay with their lives. Ugandan police say Briton and a South African were killed along with their guide in Tuesday's attack, which is being blamed on an armed militia based in the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo. What's still to come, the United States slaps a $5 million bounty on the head of al-Shabaab's deputy lead.
This week on Straight Talk Africa, as Israeli airstrikes and heavy artillery fire pound Gaza and diplomatic efforts for a ceasefire stall, many Palestinians are trying to flee to Egypt, but the passage to the border is fraught with danger. Meanwhile, hundreds of tons of humanitarian aid is sitting on trucks awaiting clearance at the border. Israel says more than 1 million people in the northern half of the Gaza Strip must head south for safety, but this is impossible. Join me, Haiti Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa as we discuss the Israel-Hamas war and the role of Egypt in this evolving conflict. This week on Straight Talk Africa, as Israeli airstrikes and heavy artillery fire pound Gaza and diplomatic efforts for a ceasefire stall, many Palestinians are trying to flee to Egypt, but the passage to the border is fraught with danger. Meanwhile, hundreds of tons of humanitarian aid is sitting on trucks awaiting clearance at the border. Israel says more than 1 million people in the northern half of the Gaza Strip must head south for safety, but this is impossible. Join me, Haiti Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa as we discuss the Israel-Hamas war and the role of Egypt in this evolving conflict.
In other news, South Africa's Foreign Minister, Naledi Pandor, is denouncing allegations she is supporting Hamas' attack on Israel, but says she spoke with Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas leader, to discuss humanitarian and Palestinian and aid for Palestinians in Gaza and other parts of the Palestinian territories. The battle for the throne of South Africa's ethnic Zulu nation is likely to be decided in a Pretoria court as a faction of the royal family seeks to dethrone the king after less than a year. Prince Simakade Zulu wants the court to overturn President Cyril Ramaphosa's recognition of King Misuzulu as the rightful leader or heir. Now, and the United States has slapped a $5 million bounty on the head of al-Shabaab's deputy leader, Abu Bakr Ali Adan, according to the U.S. State Department. The State Department says Adan spent several years as al-Shabaab's military chief after previously heading the Jabhat, al-Shabaab's armed wing. The U.S. designated al-Shabaab as a terrorist organization in 2008. Well, now, due to our coverage of the Israel-Hamas war, our technology segment with Paul Ndiho will be seen on Thursday. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch